waiting. Hello, everybody. For today, I am joined by my husband and two of my friends, and we are going to be chatting spoilers for Arcane Season 2. We're just going to jump right into it. I want to know, I think, Christy, are you the only person who waited until all of it was out to watch it?
Yes, and I watched it all in one go. I think I started at like 12 p.m. that day, and then I finished at 8. Like, just sat all the way through.
Nice.
We did something similar the first time we watched the first season where we're like, let's finally sit down and watch that show Arcane. And then we stayed up all night watching the whole first season because we didn't start watching it until I think the plan was we would watch like maybe 1 or 2 episodes. And then we're like, no, we have to.
I actually, I hate to do this. I think you're misremembering. I'm pretty sure we watched Arcane during the day. Daredevil, we stayed up to watch all night.
We watched Arcane all night.
No, I don't think so.
Oh my gosh. This is not important.
We're a little early for the usual debating.
The insignificant, unimportant details of when we watched Arcane. Anyway, yeah. So, Sarah, did you watch it? And if you did, at what time of day did you watch it?
Well, I watched it in the morning as soon as I woke up because I was like, I need it. Though I like wish it was released later because I was like, this feels like I should be sitting in a dark room watching this. But
Yeah,
I have already rewatched the entire show. So
nice.
Wow.
I felt like with season 1, when I rewatched it, I noticed a lot more. And then certain scenes also felt more emotional because of the trajectory of the characters. Do you feel like that was true for season 2?
Rewatching it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and kind of like knowing what was coming, I was like, oh my god, like it all begins like right here.
Right. So did you only rewatch season 2 or did you rewatch season 1 and season 2?
Season 1 and 2.
Oh my gosh. I really went through.
Well, so the last episodes came out and the next weekend I was like, I'm not okay. I need to rewatch this.
Are your fingernails Jinx?
Yes, they are.
Nice.
Oh, so cute.
Wait. Take a moment. So I have
Yes.
my Vi shirt. You have your lovely Victor shirt. Sean, you're representing Jinx. So Christy,
I'm representing World Hoppers.
Perfect.
yeah, I asked Sean, I'm like, do you want to wear one of my Arcane shirts or do you want to wear a World Hoppers shirt? So it's good to have World Hoppers represented.
Let the record show I was wearing a pickleball shirt.
He was wearing one before that. Let's go ahead and kick off more general thoughts. I just wanted to know, because some of the conversation will be based off of how we were connecting to it with having to wait while we were watching. But since Christy, you went through the whole thing, I'm sure you'll have different takes throughout. But we'll start with your takes for the second season. What were your feelings for, especially watching it all together?
Oh yeah, I was live messaging my friend as I was watching this, and I swear every episode I had like a bajillion reaction because there was just so much stuff happening all the time. And like when we were talking about the first season, right? I think Sean and Sarah, you both mentioned how it's felt, in the beginning it felt kind of generic, felt kind of like, stuff that you have seen before. Not exactly super original, but it was because of the way that everything was executed that made it so good. And I agreed with that too. Like, yeah, it was tropey, but it was just executed to perfection. But this second season, I'm like, there was like no tropes that I was like familiar with. Everything was so different. Could not have predicted anything that happened. And like there were a lot of good things, but at the same time, there were things that went in a direction that I didn't love either.
Like what? Like what?
Oh, am I going into it now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, like Victor's whole arc, I'm like, what is that? What was that?
I think it's fair for anybody that didn't watch our first discussion to note that we are not familiar with League of Legends lore. I had some awareness of it just being in gaming circles. So because I hear people say all the time glorious evolution, and they're like, oh, I'm like really nervous to see where Victor goes. And I'm like, okay, I feel like they might have him. So I kind of feel like I was prepped for it. But if you're not prepped for it even a little bit, and it progresses really quickly.
Yeah, I
Did
was like,
you
this
did
was
you not
not the direction
like
I thought Victor's
his
character was gonna go.
did you not like his weird like robot god form that wasn't your thing?
It was just not what it was not what I wanted for Victor. And of course, like I didn't know like the storyline because of I'm not familiar with League, so I was completely blindsided. But there were other things that I loved as well. Overall, I think I still enjoyed the first season more though, just because like the first season was like just such a masterclass in storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. And I think season 1, something that I think is fair for a lot of people who went into it, even people who like League, no one expected anything of that show. You know what I'm saying? First off, video game adaptations are notoriously terrible. And second, there was no reason for them to go as hard as they did. And so when it came out, it was like, what is this masterpiece? And it was so good. And I think having no expectations and then being so blown away was a really fun experience. Plus, I feel like they're really showing how well animation can be utilized. And in a world where everybody's trying to be the next Game of Thrones, or at least I feel like that was especially true when season 1 came out, this show is like, nah, we're gonna stick to our characters, and yeah, we're gonna use some familiar stuff, but trust us, it's gonna go in a really interesting place. Whereas season 2, it had the highest expectations put onto it. So I almost feel like it's not to say people are wrong for liking season 1 more than season 2, but I think that there's that little added factor of what we were wanting when we were going into it. And I will say one potential thing that I've seen come up that might come up in this conversation, so I'm just kind of jumping the gun here, but I don't disagree with the idea that they could have had more episodes or even a whole other season to really allow things to settle in. And maybe that would have meant some of the emotional hits, especially with Victor's plotline, like what you're talking about, might have hit even harder. And I think that feeling of like, oh my gosh, it's over, might have been a lot. That would have especially, I think, been a gut punch for everybody. But for me, already had a lot of gut punches. So, Christy, you kind of concluded by saying you liked season 1 more. If you had to give a number to season 1 out of 10 versus a number out of 10 for season 2, how would they rank?
Season 1, 10 out of 10 for sure. Season 2, I'd still give it like 8 or 9. So I still enjoyed it. But just yeah, season 1, man, season 1 was special.
Sarah, how about for you? General thoughts.
So I definitely think that watching it like week by week when the episodes came out like impacted how much I enjoyed it, because I had like a whole week to be like, oh my god, what is going to happen next? And like all of my algorithms were just all Arcane content. Like, so I was like seeing, like I sit on TikTok for like an hour and a half every night in bed. So I was like just like every single night just being like, oh my god, here's this video and this video and this video. So like having that like anticipation for the next episodes, I definitely think, not that it made me like it more than if I just watched it, but it definitely had like a certain feeling to it. But I think I might have liked season 2 more than season 1, even though there are some things that I would have changed, but I don't know.
What would you have changed?
I definitely think the pacing, even though it didn't necessarily bother me, but I can see places where they could have taken more time. So it's like a pro and a con, I guess, because it's like, yeah, I didn't find it bad, but they could have done more, and I would have watched way more episodes.
I think that's a fair statement too. A lot of us, I think, would have. I'd heard, and this is probably just a rumor, so I'm not saying this is a fact, but I've seen that they wanted to do more, or they wanted more time in the last couple episodes, but Netflix had certain restrictions where they had to cut. And if that's true, I'm just like, that sucks. Because yeah, give us more. Oh, I think everybody would have been okay with that. It's like, again, it could just be a rumor, but it makes me think of like, we need the Snyder cut, you know, that whole thing about. And then when we did finally see, when Sean and I watched the specifically, there was like the extended version of one of the DC movies. And we're like, I mean, it was better. I don't know if it was the best movie ever, but having more helped. And I think in this situation, more would have not been the worst thing in the world. I will say, off of your comments about having to wait from one week to the next, I wonder for so many people, and Christy, you can chime in on this too, for those that did wait, like 3 of the 4 of us did each week, I almost feel like certain plot lines, by having more time, it made you feel like you were going to get more out of them. And then some of them were like, no, we're actually just going to have a quick musical montage almost, and then do something. We're already done with that. Now we're moving on. Because the shifts, I feel like, in where the plots went, I think took people by surprise. Whereas if we'd watched it more back to back, maybe we wouldn't have had time to expect certain plot lines to go in certain directions. And to your point, this was almost like a phenomenon where people were going online and seeing theories of what's going to come next and things like that. And then when you didn't get them, it almost feels like you were promised something, even though you weren't technically. So, Christy, what do you feel like? Did you have expectations, or not so much because you just so quickly watched the next episode?
Yeah, because I watched them like right after the other with barely any breaks except just to like, bio break, eat, and all that kind of stuff. Like I had no time to even think about anything. So I'm just like sitting here like soaking it all in, letting it like come at me with and I imagine that is really different than if you just watched, the first 3 and then you have a week, and especially like I remember when I used to watch shows like week to week, part of the fun was going online to like speculate and everyone's talking. But there are, again, as you said, like pros and cons to it, because then like you kind of, everyone is hyped and everyone is like thinking certain things and you kind of almost believe it. And then when it doesn't happen, you're like almost disappointed that you didn't get what you were hoping for. So that's why I also just like marathon it all the way through. I'm like, no, I have no expectations. I'm just gonna take whatever they give me.
Yeah. And I partly had this in my head because Sean and I, and you both know, we, for the first time this year, watched Attack on Titan, and we watched all of it. And we did have to wait a little bit because of my schedule that we kind of imposed on to the viewing. But I can't imagine people that had to wait so long for that conclusion, especially if you thought with the years between, if you're thinking like they're definitely going to do something with this, and then they didn't at all, and you're like, what? And I can't give specifics, of course, because this is not a spoiler conversation about that show. But I think this was a much smaller scale version of that. But I think specifically a good example of this is between episode 6 and 7. After how episode 6 ends, which is devastating, I think a lot of people expected to see more of the fallout, you could almost say, from that scene. And then you have a whole episode where you don't even see those characters because you're just looking at like, meanwhile, Jace and Echo. And I think removal of the immediate what happened after, from a storytelling perspective, I feel like how they utilized it made sense. But I also think a lot of us were expecting to get to see what happened right after, similar to how at the end of season 1, Jinx obviously uses the weapon on the council, and then that's immediately where season 2 starts. And to then not have that similar thing play out here, I think made people be like, well, what the heck? Are we not going to talk about like what happened with Vander or what happened to Isha? And we kind of do, but kind of not to the degree I think people thought. Sean, your general thoughts.
I liked it. I think I like it more than season 1. The only Arcane content I consume is Arcane, so I have zero expectations between episode dumps. And usually around Thursday I'd go, oh yeah, there's more Arcane coming out, and then that would be what I watched on Saturday, and then I'd be like, wow, this is so good, and then I would think about it for basically an entire week. So all that to say, I thought it was really good, and I don't know everyone's whining about. I don't even know what the whining is about. Like,
oh, we will talk.
Even like what you were just saying, like, oh, like there's this big thing that happened, and then like we talked about these other characters. Like, isn't that like, how you get people to watch the show, because then you're sitting there like, wait, I want to know what happened to so and so. That's how you get eyeballs watching the show. Like, I don't understand. Like, you have to like build some suspense, right? Anyways, that didn't even cross my mind that that'd be a criticism. I thought it was great.
Sean is going to be the one, I feel like. And it's funny because last conversation for season 1, you like season 1 for sure. But I don't feel like you really fell in love with Arcane to the same degree until season 2, which might be very different from a lot of other people.
I also want to say, I have more thoughts. So every time we'd watch 3 episodes, I would say, oh my gosh, there's only 6 more episodes. How are they going to wrap this up in 6 episodes? And we'd watch 3 more episodes, and I go, oh my gosh, there's only 3 more episodes left. How are they going to finish this in 3 episodes? And then I felt like it finished pretty satisfactorily. I mean, I don't know. I think that's another thing. I could have had a few more episodes, maybe, but a whole nother season? No, thank you. I actually thought it was nice and compact and worked for me. I think the draw it out might have lost some of its impact personally. The only slight criticism I have is maybe like Vi disappeared for a little bit too long. I feel like towards the end, I was like, what's Vi up to right now? But that's like
you missed Vi.
Very, 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 very small. Very small.
I think it's fair to say, kind of going off of that I think a lot of people anticipated, based off of the fact that even knowing they were going to do other things outside of the end of this season, they're still going to explore things from this world. I think I especially was under the assumption that the Victor becoming a villain and there being more with that, I thought that would play out in a different thing. And this would be the conclusion of Vi and Jinx. And it would more so be focused on them while introducing Victor and Jace's conflict. But instead, well, and I should say and clarify, I was expecting Victor Jace conflict after the first 3 episodes. I was like, okay, now they're really starting to introduce that here. I didn't expect it to become such a big emphasis in season 2. And then Vi and Jinx are part of, but not necessarily the main focus of the end. So I thought the direction we would go for the last 6 episodes would be resolving them, but then building Victor. And instead it was like, they get some resolution. Victor Jace has some resolution, but I'm still wondering if we're still going to see some stuff with them later, depending on, because I feel like there's a lot of possibilities they opened up with a lot of what transpired in the season. But I wasn't expecting, instead of, oh, the Victor conflict is being introduced, I was surprised by the Black Rose, right? I'm totally spacing. Just to make sure I said it right. I wasn't expecting that to suddenly be introduced and then not really resolved, and then that's where we're left hanging. I was like, oh, okay, I guess. I think for me, Sean, to your point, I do think it's really tight. I don't necessarily think we had to have more. I just think I would have wanted Victor and Jace's stuff to be explored a little more in depth and allowed for their plot lines to be able to have more attention. And then that way we could have had more Vi and Jinx, I think, within this. And maybe even more Echo, because I feel like he obviously was gone for a lot of it for obvious plot reasons. And I think it did kind of show how much he really saves the day. But I think I could have used more personally. And it would have remedied.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, like I was just gonna say, instead of like a full, I don't think it needed a full season more, but the Black Rose thing was another one of my like kind of issues with this season, because it just, every time they talked about it, I was just so lost, and I'm like, what does any of this mean? So especially that second arc kind of lost me a little bit, because I was just like, I had no idea what was going on. I just feel, and they probably will explore it in future seasons, but I think if we got maybe like a small prequel kind of episode just to show like Ambessa's past and a little bit of that history.
There's the Ambessa book.
See, like I feel like that should have come out maybe before this season, or they had like an episode showing that, so then it could make us even more emotionally invested and actually like know what's happening.
It would be the version of in book series when some random character gets their own book for a book because it's like we need their stuff to happen, but we
Like a
can't.
Sanderson interlude.
Yeah. A Sanderson Stormlight novella, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have been opposed to that. But I do feel like that would take away some of the suspense of whatever they're planning for these future, which maybe getting ahead of ourselves, but since we're already here, I feel like we should talk about the what will happen next element in our prediction. So we know that they are going to explore 3 different areas. One of the areas is where Ambessa is from and where I feel like the conflict with Black Rose is the most prevalent. But if I understand correctly, I think Black Rose has their fingers in a lot of things throughout various different places. So I think I posed this, idea to all of you, but I'll say it now. What I think would be really cool is rather than what I think the initial want would be, which is to go to Noxus and to explore that next because it's been introduced. I like the idea they're in the background as we go to the 2 other places. And Mel is kind of like a recurring character trying to warn people within their stories about this threat. And then she's kind of like rallying people together. And then we finally get Noxus and we've built this Black Rose enemy up to be these Sean, what are the things called?
It sounds like Avengers all of a sudden.
No, but in Marvel, what are the things that can like shapeshift? What are they called again? Oh, come on.
Scroll?
Yeah, I feel like it's like,
Scroll, yeah.
I feel like it'd be almost like that where you're like, okay, they've been around this whole time, and then you'd be able to see hints of it as you watch through all the other shows, and then you finally get it in Noxus at the end. I think that would be a lot of fun. And
Sounds
because a lot
almost
of
like
us
Cosmere too.
I was thinking that too.
and I think a lot of us, there's debate, of course, about whether Jinx lived at the end or not. I'm definitely in the camp that I think she did. And I feel like for a open ending to work, you have to have there be enough evidence that people in either camp can believe it, which I think they had. But you also want to make sure you don't rob people of their version too soon if you're going to bring that character back. So if they do bring Jinx back later, I feel like it would be also kind of fun to see glimpses of her, like her drawings in the background, and it like is quick graffiti you see on the wall, but then if you look at a certain spot, you're like, that looks very much like something that Jinx would do, and then she pops up way later. I think that could be a lot of fun as well. Slightly different than everything with Mel and Black Rose, but those 2 things are what I would enjoy. But I mean, since the first time we talked about Arcane ever, my prediction was that they were going to have a plot line with Piltover and Zahn, and then they would expand into other places. Sarah, you watched that conversation, right? And
Yeah,
I
I
talked about it in that where I was like, I could see them like opening up this world because there's just so much. So I've been wanting them to go other places. And what you were saying before about like, I mean, I would watch if they do whatever else they do. That's going to be me. I'm happy to watch whatever they put out next. So what about for all of you? Sean, we'll go to you next. What do you anticipate will happen next, or what would you like?
All of that you just said makes me worry. That sounds like a lot, man. I don't
Oh my
know about all
gosh.
that. I like I said, I was praising its compactness and how they fit so much into 9 episodes. I don't like all this expanding stuff. I don't need to have
They
to
could
watch
do
a
it.
billion things just to understand what's happening in season 4. So I don't know about
What I'm saying
or
though,
I don't want to have to read a book.
no, Sean. Well, they could do something really similar to what they did with Arcane, though, where let's say they explored another area. They did, we'll say 2 seasons, and those 2 seasons are their own thing and they are tight. But similar to how Black Rose got introduced in this season, let's say there's a similar amount of screen time in 2 seasons of another area to what we got for Black Rose in that. I feel like that's
I'll put it this way. I would like the Black Rose to be like the antagonist of the next season, and maybe it gets a couple and then we're done with it. I don't, like I feel like the build up, the big bad guy thing has been done, and
That's true.
I don't know. I'm kind of, the more you said it, the more I was like, I really don't want that to happen. I want the opposite. I want the opposite of that. That's my take. I don't have any actual predictions because I know nothing. Remember, I consume 0 Arcane content beyond Arcane, so I don't even know what
you did start to listen to one of my reviews after
That's true.
It was funny because after you did it, because we didn't even get to talk. The first weekend that the first 3 episodes came out, I was dog sitting for my mom. So I drove all the way back home, recorded thoughts, then drove all the way back to my mom's on the other side of town to keep watching her dog. But at one point, Sean was driving and he started listening to it, and he very sweetly was like, I don't notice anything. You notice well. We hadn't actually had the
True.
chance to talk about it, which I had to immediately drive back and forth. So anyway, Sean did consume my content, just for clarity's sake.
You're right. You're right.
Sarah, what do you think, or what would you like to have happen next?
Well, I think this is funny because Christy, you made the Cosmere parallel, and like with the Cosmere, my thoughts definitely go with what Sean was saying. But in this case, I would like it if they kind of like were building up like the big bad through different seasons. I just think that would be like, I don't know, an interesting way to tie everything together.
And it's less demanding than books, because if this were to be what happened, I think that because there are going to be 3 other things, so total there would be 4 that we know of right now. Arcane obviously could stand on its own. If we followed this trajectory, the next 2 could stand on their own. It would be like the last one that could potentially stand on its own, but we've been being built up for it. I think they could all still be watched though individually. And I think that's less demanding than book series that get to a point, or like where Marvel is now, where you really can't jump in and just enjoy as much as in the past, if at all. So yeah, I think it's a little different. There's a way to make both of our thoughts work. What about for you, Christy? Oh, before Christy, sorry. Were there any predictions though that you had, or not so much? No,
Not really.
not really. Christy, what do you think?
I pretty much 100% agree with Sarah, like both on Cosmere opinions and this one. I just think, it would be, for the other ones that they explore, they're probably gonna, introduce the other League characters in their own world, and I think that would be cool. I would like to see that. I think I like the idea that we see a little bit of the Black Rose, like kind of intertwined in storylines here and there, but not completely like in the front. Because like with Marvel and stuff, sometimes it's just, those big bads, they just come out of nowhere. It's like just for that movie, and there's like not really much buildup. So I like this idea that you see like shadows of it. It's slowly building up, and then like the final like big showdown.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about also, I suppose returning to the concept of criticisms for this show in particular, I do think even though we all went in knowing, so it didn't bother me to have Black Rose stuff introduced and be fairly unresolved, I still feel like there isn't really a conclusion, a satisfying conclusion to that. So if you, for whatever reason, I don't know, we're hoping to have things resolved, because some people, I think this is always shocking because we're online and we see it. And Sarah, what you were saying, like you went on to TikTok and watched a bunch. We see all this information, but there are people out there that don't look up the stuff, and they go on Netflix and they're like, oh, the second season of that show's out, and they would have no idea that there's anything that isn't going to be resolved, and that they would be like, wait, is there going to be a 3rd season though? And I mean, those people, I would imagine for them, this maybe didn't stand on its own as much as maybe they would have liked, and that's a fair thing to feel. I think anyway, but
I think I'm like half of those people right now, because I try to stay away from like anything. I went into a blind, so the Black Rose thing like threw me off a little bit.
It still threw me off just because I thought that the things we were going to get more of were just going to, like, to the whole point we've been having is I'm like, oh, I think Victor and Jace are going to be a bigger deal later. I wasn't expecting it to play out the way that it did. Before we jump into more thoughts about this season and characters and everything, I want to now segue into, for those of us that do go online, what are the worst takes we've seen about this show, or because I've seen a lot, I can introduce you to them and you can give your thoughts on them. So, Sarah, since you also have seen other people's thoughts, I will say I had to record all of my thoughts immediately so that I wasn't impacted by anybody's. And so it is kind of surprising when it's like, here's my thoughts, and then I see other people's thoughts and I'm like, what? But Sarah, what are some of the worst takes in your opinion that you've seen?
So the one that I see all the time, and I don't know if I'd say this is the worst take, but I definitely don't agree with it. And it's actually interesting because I mentioned TikTok before, but I've also been watching like Instagram Reels. And I see this comment on Instagram way more often than TikTok. And I don't know if that has like what the deal with that is, but the interpretation of Victor and Jace's relationship.
Okay.
A lot of people see it as brotherly, and I did not read it that way at all.
Okay.
So I don't know. I was like, did we watch the same thing? Because like I did not get that.
It's funny because Jashana and Roger, I think she especially didn't get that it was romantic at all or that there was anything there. She saw it purely as like, because Jashana loves the when your like soulmate is your friend trope. So I think she especially resonated with it in that way. But and then I think Roger also actually resonated with it more in that way too, if I'm remembering correctly. But I mean, for me, I'm like, I saw it as friendship, but I also don't think people are wrong for maybe reading more into it. I don't, but you know, maybe it's specifically. I know you said it's what you're seeing on Instagram. You also are looking at a lot of the fan art, and I know that to be true. So it's not surprising that you're seeing it.
Yeah,
it's showing you what you want to see. But so okay, so you said you just disagree that with people who are that don't believe that it's even a possibility for there to have been.
Yeah. Because I definitely saw it as something more than that. And like the way, especially there were like parallels between Victor and Mel to like Jace viewing both of them. And I was like, he already has some kind of relationship with Mel, but then paralleling Victor to that, I was like, okay, that
was one of the things you've seen, was it literally how they animated them? Because there's like back to back. Yeah, people have done edits where you see the animation is basically identical, so it could be that. I've seen some other people say like they needed to save money, so they just reused the same like gestures and stuff. So that's possible. It's like motion capture, you know. For, Sean, I saw a second ago that you unmuted yourself. So did you have something to add to this? Did you see them as? Oh no! Did you freeze? Oh no!
Oh, you're back.
Okay, you have to unmute yourself now. Okay, what were your thoughts?
I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
What was the question?
A second ago, I saw you unmute yourself, so I thought.
So I think I took it more bro-ish, but maybe with the caveat that Victor had some sort of feelings. I don't know if I ever got that from Jace though, until like the very end. Then I thought like maybe, but I don't know. That was like that's
years ago, and this might have informed some people's opinions. I'm pretty sure there's a video that exists. This is something like Victor being gay for Jace for 4 minutes straight or something like that. And I think it's Victor just like, you know, interacting with Jace. I've never watched the video, but it has popped up for me a number of times. I might have the time increment wrong, but I've seen that before. And then Christy, do you feel like you see both, or are you like, no, I see one way more?
First of all, I will ship anything. Okay. I see two characters even look at each other, I'm like, I'll ship it. But I also didn't really think of them this way. And maybe I think it's maybe just because I don't like Jace so much. I'm like, no.
I am curious. So I immediately after episode 6, even though I was mad at Jace, I thought there's got to be something to his actions here. Christy, did you feel that way, or did you were you not that mad at Jace, or did you think there was more to his actions since you did immediately just watch the next episodes?
Refresh my memory again.
When he just like messes everything up in the little like robot Jesus land, you know?
Oh yeah. I thought he was just off his rocker. Like, I don't know. I didn't really think anything. But I'm like, you can't make me dislike Jace anymore. But
I like
will
Jace a
say,
lot more this season, except for dude, they could not resist when him and Mel are reunited, and he's like, "You used us," and I'm like, "Shut up!"
he's like,
But then he has
I
finally
never
a
asked for
moment.
any of this. I'm
Yeah,
like,
and then he has a moment where he's like, "I'm sorry, there's way more important things going on, and you've been through stuff too." And I'm like, "Growth, good job, Jace."
I
But
did
yeah,
like him a little bit more in this season though, especially after he came back, because I'm like, ooh, now you're kind of hot.
that's not surprising that you felt that way. Okay, so that we interjected a hot take or a worst take. We'll come back. We'll revisit this. Because you're currently thirsting, Christy and Sarah. Let's do what we did at our last discussion. So, who was our favorite character this season? Who was the most interesting character to us? And who did we thirst after the most? So, Christy, what are your answers to this?
Okay, I'll say thirst. I don't think I actually thirsted after anyone this season, actually. Maybe Mel, because Mel is just so pretty. But yeah, with the way that I know my answer last time was Victor, but like the way Victor's arc went, I was just like, this is slowly waning.
You saw the vacuum video, right? I didn't send this to both of you. I had to have sent it. What? The guy that's like when you're sad because your boyfriend turns to robot Jesus and he's like fixing hex tech and it's just like his vacuum.
I did.
Like,
we did not see that.
Sad music plays and then he's just like staring at Jesus. Well, not literally Jesus, but staring at Victor on his TV, like looking sad.
No. Okay, I changed my answer. Thirst, Echo. Echo, especially with the hair and the earring. I was like, this is working. Most interesting goes to Mbessa. I thought she was so cool, but also her story was so interesting. I wanted to know way more about her. And my favorite, this might be a surprise, but my favorite is Savika. I love Savika. She's so cool and she's so funny. And Jinx and Savika was the duo that I did not know I needed so much this season.
Well, they were so mean to each other before.
Yeah, and just to see them team up kind of like reluctantly, but still like looking out for each other, I was like, I loved it so much.
Sarah, what about for you?
I think my favorite is still Victor. The most interesting, this is kind of like most interesting going forward, but I think it's Mel because she has a lot of potential. So I find the thought of that very interesting. And then the one that I thirsted over the most was Caitlyn.
I saw
Ponytail Caitlyn.
Okay. I saw this thing that was like between Vi's hairstyles in this and like Jinx cutting her hair and Caitlyn's ponytails. The lesbians have so many options. I was like, I love that. Apparently the high ponytail was really working for a lot of people. Christy, you're not alone.
The ponytail with the turtleneck, I was like, I need a moment. But like I noticed in the first season she wears hats a lot and like her hats are like kind of stupid looking. Like
yeah.
So like once she finally took those hats off, I was like, oh my god. Like, I can't contain myself.
That's all it took.
Yeah.
Sean, what about for you? Favorite, interesting, and thirsting.
I'm gonna say favorite. Man, it's hard. It's hard. Favorite. I'm gonna say Jinx. I think transformation from crazy villain person to hero of the people. Always a good transformation. And interesting / also favorite, Victor. Victor got a big bump this season. Always love a time travel, to tell my friend to, knock some sense into me plot line. That's always a good plot line. And Thursday, I got Smeech. Definitely
Stop.
Smeech.
Everybody's character that I feel like most people were relieved he was killed.
Wrong time to take a sip of water.
Sean, who actually?
I feel like I'm just naming off the people I found most interesting. Jace, also big leg up. Jace went from annoying all the time to fighting for our freedoms, man. Nothing sexier than fighting for your freedoms.
That you were thirsting after Jace. It was the beard.
Yeah, for sure. I still, Caitlyn went so down. Like, for me, I was like, big thumbs down, Caitlyn. Come on. Anyway, so yeah, not Caitlyn.
I think for me, this is no surprise to anybody, but Pit Fighter Vi is the one I'm thirsting after the most. I mean, come on. I feel like that little montage.
You liked her moody black
Yes.
makeup thing she got going? All right.
Yes. A lot. It was great. I didn't like the longer hair. I was like, let's get a little shorter again. But anyway, most interesting is Singed, the doctor, I think. I mean, okay, can I say Vander's still my favorite? I feel like I can't at this point. Echo, though, I think will be my favorite. Echo is the character that, for me, could easily be so perfect they're boring, but instead he is so cool and there's so much emotional intelligence and depth with his character. And I really like how much his knowledge and his creativity got to shine. And I also will say, I wish we had a little more of him and Jace, because I actually really liked their interaction, that small interaction when him and Heimerdinger broke in. And you actually got a little bit more explanation about the runes and how the magic works and everything. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Sean, what are you gonna add?
Oh, I was gonna say 2 of Heimerdinger's excellent pupils.
Yes.
Hey,
so
Heimerdinger was the real MVP though. He
yeah, do we
sacrificed
think
himself.
he's dead? I part of me is like, is anyone? I don't know.
I feel like they've met their bringing people back from the dead quota. They can't do that again.
I don't know, because with Heimerdinger, what slightly confused me is that when you see Echo leaves that reality, there is still a version of Echo in that reality. So wouldn't that mean there's already a version of Heimerdinger in that reality? And we just saw the version from Echo's? Did he kill himself in both realities? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
I get you, but I'm like, I don't know if this is just us thinking too hard.
Possibly.
And
well, it was the most lacking in emotion death, I suppose. Because I'm like, was he dead? And then doesn't Jinx even, or Powder in this case, she wipes something off of Echo, and I'm like, isn't that a piece of Heimerdinger that she just wiped away? So I don't know. Oh, okay, I have to ask, because Sarah, you brought up being shocked that nobody sees potential gayness between Victor and Jace. Have you seen people that think that this reality's Vander and Silco were together and they were like
I've seen zoomed in videos of when
yes. Yeah. So that's a possibility. Sean definitely noticed immediately Milo and Klager. How Klager
I was like, what was that lingering?
No, he seemed totally in love with Milo, but Milo seemed to really like the DJ girl who dies in our reality. I did really like the way they had all these smaller characters getting emotion. Okay, I'm forgetting his name, but basically Vander 2.0 guy. I'm like, what the heck? I wanted more of Lars, right? Lars, something like that.
Loris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked him and he never really got to shine. So I was hoping for more of him. That's my complaint. I wish we'd had more of his character, because he seemed, I just feel like there's a lot about him that we could have known. And then the guy that hugs his family goodbye. And I'm like, no, this is sad. So all those people. Anyway, and also Vander just dying. Was so sad. Okay, let's
Can my favorite be alternate reality Jinx?
yeah.
What
So
could have been
cute.
Jinx?
I
Yeah.
love her.
Yeah, your favorite character Vi ruined everything in our
Okay,
reality.
stop.
Just by being alive.
I told Sean, I'm like, how much do you want to bet that people are immediately going to be like, so you're telling me the world was way better when Vi died, right? And it's just like, no, it was better when like Hex Tech and didn't form into what it did and then create this further divide between Zon and Piltover, and Silco didn't become a divine boss. Yeah, no, it's all Vi's fault, which brings me to another take I have seen that drives me up a wall, which is that Silco was better for Jinx than Vi, and that Vi totally knew that Jinx was considering. This is getting into a topic of self-harms, just a heads up for anybody, but we know where Jinx is likely going, but people think that Vi knew for a fact when she says like I'm going to break the cycle that meant she was going to harm herself, and that it was messed up of Vi to not go after her when Vi is finally let out of the cell. And I'm like, what? In what world did Vi know? Because you can argue that she's dense for not like thinking that's what it was going to be. But I personally find this, okay, I'm just going to be blunt. I think this is such a problematic statement because it's so obvious Vi doesn't know. And it's okay that Vi doesn't know because that's a realistic, like, people don't always pick up. And why would she? She spent her formative years being beaten in prison. So why would she have like expertise in what to pick up on? And she's hardly been around her sister. She goes around and after Jinx so many times, and then in this case she thinks that Jinx like betrayed her. She literally punches her where she was wounded and then locks her in a cell that she was, again, like, is the home of her trauma, meaning Vi's, for years. She locks her in and she's like, I'm gonna break the cycle, and then she leaves. The last time she did something like this, she blew up the council. So I feel like Vi's thought is, I've been betrayed and like I don't know what Jinx is gonna do. Not, my sister's definitely gonna go kill herself, so let me have sex with my friend. Like, I don't think that's the thought that was going through Vi's head. And the reason I think this is problematic is because there are so many people that don't end up picking up on certain phrases or tones of voice. And then when something does happen to someone they care about, they forever say, I should have known, I should have picked up on the signs, I can't believe I didn't see it. And they blame themselves. And it's not their fault when things like that happen. And I thought that collectively we were past that and that people knew how this is like not an okay idea to start perpetuating again. That it's because people are saying it's literally her fault for not going after Jinx. And I'm like, she has no idea where she is. How is she supposed to find her? We don't know. I'm imagining a lot of time has passed. It's the stupidest take. I probably shouldn't say that. People are entitled to their own opinions. I obviously think it's a stupid take, though. And then
I feel like they can only say that because they know what Jinx meant, because they were in her head. They saw everything. Like they don't realize like Vi like cannot read minds.
Yeah, and Vi often doesn't seem like, I mean, Vi is almost like naive to a fault. And that's the whole thing, is she always comes back to Jinx like everything's gonna be okay, like that's kind of her thing over and over again. It's the same like we talked about in season 1 when Jinx literally shoots at her and Caitlyn and on the bridge, and people are like, I can't believe Vi had just said earlier she was gonna go find Jinx, and then like she just like walks away, and you're like, after she got shot at by her sister, do we? And like this drives, I'm like, at what point is Jinx like okay, this is the best way to capture I think what I'm about to say. I saw somebody share a thing about when Jinx and Vi have their like sister fight in the tunnel, and it's such a good sister fight, and Jinx slaps her, and Vi like has this look like, what the heck? And somebody commented and was like, if Vi were Jinx, she would like spiral into a depression for years over that one slap. I thought that was like pretty funny, but I just feel like the show shows us so much with Jinx that it's like easy to know how she's feeling. But with Vi, for all we know, because this is what drives me crazy, I'm like, for all we know, Vi was suicidal in that moment too. Like again, she's locked up where she was in a cell, not the same cell, presumably. And she obviously has a lot of trauma surrounding that. She feels betrayed by everyone. Her dad figure just died again. Like, I don't understand why we have no empathy for Vi, who has sacrificed so much, and all she ever wants, pretty much, is to try to find her sister and make things right.
This
And
is
I'm not
classic
even.
Vi stan behavior.
I was just
Classic.
about to say that this isn't even just because I love Vi. I just think
No.
I'm willing to even like. I feel like I see why so many of these characters are the way they are, and it's just like the show does such a great job of, I think, in my opinion, creating empathy for people in different circumstances. And then when they, I don't know, when people have their faves, they're like, yeah, well, this other character messed everything up. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So anyway, what are your thoughts on all that?
I think that's exactly it. People have their favorite characters and they fail to see like the nuance between characters and relationships. They just defend their characters to the end.
I 100% agree that what she's supposed to do, just go run after her and find her when Jinx is really good at not being found. Like, I think we know that. I just do wonder if that was maybe not the right time for that special moment, though. I was kind of like, really? Right now in the jail cell? Oh, all right.
That I don't mind people. I don't
was
mind
just
people having
thinking, like,
that
doesn't Caitlyn have like a
Things-
house, or you can find a hotel?
nice
I don't know.
Maybe her dad's still there. Maybe she's like, well,
I think,
but
Maddie was
yeah,
still
that
there,
just to
too.
be clear, that is not. I don't mind people being like, I think that was a weird moment for that, or that was a weird place for that. That's not. I don't care if people have that opinion, but I do think that the other thought is a little odd. And Sarah, I want you to get the chance to respond to that take before I mention something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ridiculous. Like, also, even when Echo finds Jinx, he has to try like 4 or 5 times before he's even able to like speak to her. So like, I don't think that even if Vi had found her before anything happened, like, I don't think she would have been able to do anything if she was even able to make it there on time. Because when I was rewatching, I noticed that it showed that it was like nighttime when you see Caitlyn go down to the cell. So I was like, it's probably like been so long since Jinx left anyway. So I don't know. I think it's ridiculous.
It wasn't
Yeah.
like Caitlyn and Jinx passed in the hallway, and there's like a little like, hey, we go see your
How'd you get
sister.
out?
Yeah, I've seen some people that are like, see, Echo understood. I'm like, what? He just got lucky. Like, what are you talking about? That is the
He
least-
literally had like he's reverse time. Like that's not
Yeah.
lucky. That's
I don't understand. I mean, I love Echo and he saved the day and he's the best. But I just feel like that version of the way things played out is bizarre. And I saw someone else that was like, I don't understand why she keeps calling Jinx. Like, why doesn't she at least try calling her Powder in that moment? And I'm like, what? What are these like? Why can't Vi be a genius who just knows how to fix everything? Is what it feels like. Anyway, and then the whole Silco was better, like loved her more and was better for Jinx than Vi. I'm just like, okay, did we forget that Silco killed? Like he killed people. He also was like, I mean, he definitely used Jinx. He didn't mind that she was like killing people. I'm like, I don't know if that makes you a good parent. Like being, because she does in season 1 kill some people. That's what sets like, Caitlyn on this investigation too. And she comes back to Silco and she's like, happy progress day. And she brings him the stuff and he's like, I can use this. And do I think he loved her in his own way? Yeah, that's what makes, to your point, Christy, about like, there's a lot of nuance with these characters. And I feel like he's a really well-written villain. But also, like, if we reflect on what we learned from season 2, he totally knew who these kids were. He knew who Vi and Jinx were, because he knew when their mother was pregnant and he was willing to basically kill them, because when Vi is trying to get Vander in season 1 at the end of the first act, he's sending his shimmered up goons at her, like knowing full well that she's probably gonna die. He only sees he sees himself in Little Powder, which is what eventually means he latches on to her for. But he was gonna he was making deals with Marcus and finding a way to get an in because he was so consumed with wanting revenge against Vander. And then he's consumed by that until he realizes he has to give her up. But that doesn't mean I saw someone that's like, you mean I saw this comment to your thing too, Sarah, about seeing people on Instagram, their comments. Somebody was like saying that it's crazy that people think Silco was better for her. And someone's like, he was parenting her the way he knew best, like literally every parent does. And I was like, what is this argument? What? I don't like so Munchausen by proxy.
Basically gives a pass to like any terrible parent.
Yes,
It's
that's
like
what I'm
that's
like.
the best they
Right.
know. They can't do anything.
That's all they know. So like it's fine. Like no accountability for parental figures
That's I know.
whatsoever.
So that's it. They did
It's
the
just-
best they could.
I like Silco as a character. I think he's fantastic. And I'm also emotional every time when he says like there's nothing so as undoing as a dog. Like it makes me choked up every time. But I think to argue that like Vi ruined everything because Silco was so much better, I think is like people not being able to kind of take off the Silco goggles a little bit. So anyway, I'm curious your takes on that. The opinion.
My only take is Shimmered Up Goons, a good band name.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Sarah, what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I still think that's ridiculous. Like, I don't know. He's basically like a drug lord, I guess. Like, and like not manipulating her, that might be too strong of a word, but definitely like encouraging her to do things. Like, no, he's not a good parent.
Tries to convince her sister is not like when he finds out Vi's alive, he doesn't tell her. He kind of, yeah. Anyway, Christy, did you have any thoughts on that take?
Well, like I said, like people just can't see nuance. They see a character they like, they latch on to that character. It's always got to be like this or that. There's no in between. Yeah.
What I think segueing back into our opinions about this season. Oh, Sean, yes.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, I have a take two later.
The only part, and this is surprising because it doesn't take a whole lot, but the only part where the waterworks almost
yes.
came was when Vander Wolfman says, get your hands off my daughter. That was like so sad to me.
Yeah, Sean
My
was like,
notable moment.
don't look at I can't watch the Isha scene.
See, that one was sad to me, but I Isha, like, you don't really know her. I'm not saying it's not sad that she died, but like Vander, and he says that because it's Jinx, right? Who's in danger at that moment.
Yeah,
like,
he says don't touch
she's
my
been like
daughter.
so abandoned. I mean, we just talked about Silco being her father figure, not the best, so I don't know. A father's love in that moment. Very beautiful. Waterworks.
Yeah,
Notable moment.
I don't think you're alone. I think that got a lot of people. And to your point, she didn't really ever have like Silco kind of brought that same energy, I'll say. Because anytime any of the other the crime bosses are like, you need to get rid of your whatever they would say, he'd have that like little tiny twitch. And so he kind of had that same thing going. But I feel like
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
She almost needed that, but through like warmth and like the kind of love that I feel like is a healthy love, even though he is Warwick in this moment. What were you going to say though, Sean?
Well, just I think like oddly we don't see Vander actually exhibit love towards them in the first season. Not that he doesn't love them, but you see more Vander Vi interactions and like a dad being like, you be safe now, don't go getting into trouble. Like that's kind of, and you're like, well, that's love, but like you're not
wisdom.
Yeah, but you're not like, that was such a lovely dad moment. But this was like, I don't know, like very much like protective. And you're like, oh yeah, he loves her. That's right.
When
That's good.
when they give you that little flashback while they're falling of him like watching them sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Christy, you had one, right? You were also.
Oh, I was gonna say I have one of the best takes that I saw was Milo dying saved him from growing up to have that mustache.
So Sean's on mute, but I can hear him cracking up from
I could hear it too.
through mine. That's really funny. That's also pretty dark, but you know, it's like
In a way, she did him a favor.
I've seen some very you know, like some people have said before, the worst thing a woman can be is annoying. Apparently, the worst thing a man can be is like poorly groomed. Unless it's Jace, and then it's like, oh, maybe this is an upgrade. I don't know. Anyway, what is a notable moment for you, though, Christy?
I think the entire episode 7 was my favorite of this season.
Yeah.
And just seeing Echo in the other alternate reality and everyone thriving, and I'm sorry that Vi is not there. And I don't think it's Vi's fault that, you know, everyone's happy. But especially like he's been alone and kind of having to, you know, in this other world, kind of suffering for so long, to have that chance at happiness and seeing that he could be happy, but then having that snatched away from him. But not just that, but he has to leave by choice. It's just so heartbreaking, and that I cried that episode. I probably cried the hardest that episode because I'm like, just let him be happy.
This might not be 100% accurate, but I've seen some people say, you know, when they're dancing and how it's like kind of almost patchy, the way that the scene plays, it's not as smooth. Apparently there's like 4 frames per second, which is like, because he can go back 4 seconds. So the number 4 is like representing how much he wants to hold on to every second of their dance. And you're like, oh, he's so sweet. And also I really like the weapon that you see him use, that like green sword look at the very, very end when they're fighting against Victor. Also, the way it's animated when he's like pulling and they're like, they keep going up. I don't know what it is about that frame, like that scene, but the animation, I feel like a lot of their animation went wild in that whole last fight with Victor. But he gets that through the wreckage of like the clock, I believe, which is pretty cool. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? I feel like everybody's just like, okay.
No.
I vaguely remember the clock.
Echo's sword, Arcane. I'm gonna look up the image. So and I'll put it on the screen really quick. Anyway, Christy, did you have another notable moment you want to mention?
Ooh, there was that one quote that I think Mbessa said it. She's like, "We do not lament a warrior's death. We avenge it." I was like, oh, chills.
This is what I'm talking about. Can you see it in this frame?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
I see.
And then he uses it here. Also, him just showing up with Jinx in that scene was so good. You're like, yes. Even though it was kind of, it's in our background right now. Even though they kind of showed that in the previews. I will say that is one thing I consider not watching any of the previews for the show before it aired. But I was like, no, I want to watch. So I watched one of the trailers. And I feel like them showing some of that fight in the trailer sort of took out some of the suspense of like what happens with like what happened to Echo. It's like, well, okay, well, we know that he's going to be in the fight. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like some of the excitement maybe was pulled out a little bit. Sarah, what was a notable moment for you?
So one of the ones that relates to Sean's notable moment was when they're in the like tunnel or whatever and Vi says he's your father too. I was like, I am gonna perish. Like, this is too much for me. But the other one that was very notable to me was Victor and Jace at the end. Like, just even like the visuals in that whole scene were stunning. I was like, this is so beautiful. And like the conversation that they had, I was like, I love this so much. So I love that scene.
I like that scene a lot too. Big
I
thumbs up.
can't wait to rewatch the show because I feel like it's animated so well, and I kind of feel like I didn't get to appreciate it the first time. I appreciate it. I feel like I'll appreciate it so much more watching it again. And I believe the company's name is Fortiche. They're incredible. I just thought they utilized different art styles really well. So I know I talked about Isha's death, but speaking of art styles, when they go in, I can't like talk about this scene or think about this scene without getting emotional. I saw a comment that's like, someone's about to die when their whole life flashes on the screen. Because when I was like, no, and they just show her happy with like Jinx changing her hair color and some of them like dancing and stuff, I was like, come on. It was sad. And then
I didn't expect in that scene they were playing like a Mandarin song in the background. I was like, interesting. Like, does that? I don't know what that means.
No, I've seen other people. I think my friend shared something with me, and some people's interpretation is that a lot of the audience doesn't speak that or wouldn't be able to, know what the lyrics are necessarily. And they almost feel like that's sort of representing how Isha and Jinx are, where you don't actually have anything verbal that's being pulled in from what Isha, like her actions and everything. It's all through, or I should say, she doesn't speak anything that Jinx can like take in. It's all through actions and the emotions that they have together. That like that was kind of representative. But I don't know. That's like a interpretation I saw. But I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of people that would know, though. Like, not everybody, but I feel like a lot of people would know. So I don't know. That almost feels like. I have to say, have you guys seen the edits of how Arcane has to air in countries that are like no lesbians?
Yes.
Have you seen?
I've
this?
seen one picture. Like, Vi is just completely gone.
Yeah, she's just like leaning at not on nothing. Caitlin,
or is Caitlin gone or Vi gone? One of them is just not
or
there.
the scene with her and Maddie, with Caitlin and Maddie, and it just seems like Caitlin's talking to herself because like Maddie's not right next to her, and then like they show her from the window and she's just alone on her bed. And you're like, what? They didn't even try. And apparently the scene in the cell, they just cut. They don't even like attempt. It just goes right from her being like, "You're getting rather predictable," and then like Vi looks at her and it just leaves the scene. I think it's
since we're sort of circling around Caitlin, can I just say it was good writing, but you probably shouldn't get rid of people's civil rights and become a military dictator just because something bad happened to you. I just generally I feel like that was like maybe a bad call. Also on a personal level, you hooked up with a traitor, I mean, she didn't know, but come on, use your head.
How dare Caitlin not know Maddie
was a big thumbs down. If I were Vi, I would have been like, I'm kicking you to the curb.
If I could do better.
You could.
I will say to your point about it was well done, but also you're like, is when Caitlin hits her with her gun and then walks away and Vi is just like left behind.
So sad.
It is so sad.
And Vi should have never been with her ever again.
I know I'm not going to harp on this over and over again, but I do wonder if the same people that are like Silco was a great, perfect parent to Jinx, if they're also like Mbessa was like a great mom to Mel. Like,
and a good role model to Caitlin for sure.
Yeah, she's everybody's mom. I would think not. How do we like Mbessa as kind of like the replacement, you could say, not literally in their character types, but that they're fulfilling role as a role as villain. What did we think of that in comparison to Silco from season 1? I will
think
say,
she's cool.
I think Silco, I liked him more, and I think that he had more nuance than what we got from Mbessa. But I still liked Mbessa as a villain. She was really cool. They write really cool villains. What do you think, Sarah?
I also like Silco more. With Ambessa, she mentions like doing everything for her family a lot, and I was like, I get it, but also like the number of times that she mentioned it, I was like, should we know something else about her family? Like, what makes her family so important, I guess? And like, her son is in theory already dead, so it's just Mel that she has left, I'm assuming. So like, what else does her family entail? So I thought there was more that we could have known about her, and I get there is the book that's going to be about her, but I would have liked to see more about her in the show.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt like we could have gotten more Mbessa in general. I think, Chrissy, you were even talking about this obviously from way earlier in the conversation. And Mbessa, I think, is one of those characters where this is why I feel like she will be a cooler character after we get Black Rose stuff, because I don't think we really understand what a threat they are. And she seems to understand both in like knowing what they're capable of, but then also the personal side of they killed her son. And I think they killed her son despite the fact that she was, I think if I'm catching correctly, they killed her son like regardless of something she did or said. So, or she had to like end up sort of kind of choosing between her children, or like that's why I want to know more about her, and I don't feel like we got quite as much. So I feel like she might become a character that you're more empathetic toward in hindsight, but we're not maybe there just yet, which is another reason why Silco to me became, I think, was better, I should say. Although I still am like, you're more villainous than I realized, given that you literally knew Vi and Jinx's mom. But what do you think, Christy, as Mbessa as a villain versus Silco?
They're different kinds of villains. They have different goals too. I don't really know if I can compare the two of them, but I really did love Mbessa. If I recall correctly, she said something about like having to trade one child to save another. So like she willingly gave up her son to save Mel by sending her away, and I think that's why Black Rose killed her son, like out of kind of revenge, I guess. And have you guys seen the song and music video that came out about Mbessa before this? Her song is so good. It gives like a little bit of when she was
Mbessa
younger.
singing?
No, it's a different singer, but she does a really good job like sounding like Mbessa.
Oh.
I have to give it a watch again. It doesn't give like the whole Black Rose and kind of background, but it does show her like when she was younger and stuff. But yeah, I really wanted a little bit more of a backstory as well, because I just find her really interesting.
I'm sure the people that are familiar with the lore and like Black Rose and everything have so much more information. Like we're over here like, what exactly is she so worried about? You know, I saw somebody who on something or other, somebody that is familiar, they're just like, this isn't even very interesting. Oh, I guess it is for all of the arcane noobs or whatever. And
to be fair, I have a lot of friends who do know Lore League, and even they were like, we're confused.
Well, I saw somebody reply to that person. This wasn't exactly what they said, but it was something to the effect of like, your dino nuggets are done. Like, I don't remember what it was. It was like, it was something like, go back to your room, kid. Like the response was very amusing. Anyway, so, okay, I feel like we got to talk more about Victor, because we kind of have touched on his character here and there, but we haven't really like had a deep dive moment for this. Well, it's not gonna probably go that deep, but let's talk about Victor a little bit. So, as the person wearing the Victor shirt, Sarah,
oh my god,
tell us your thoughts on Victor's arc, and you just rewatched the entire show, and how did that play out for you?
I Well, at least with his stuff in season 2, said he was my favorite still. But I guess I don't really understand some of it. Like, I can see how he like takes like the hex core into himself, but like where he kind of is separate from the hex core and hex tech, I don't really understand. So I'm not sure how much of what he did was himself and how much was the hex core.
Right.
So I'm like unclear on that still.
Do you feel like Sky was really there, as in she had been absorbed previously, or do you feel like it was his own mind creating her, or do you feel like the hex tech was creating her to influence him?
I'd like to believe that she was actually in there, but I don't have any like evidence, I guess, to back that up other than that being what I want.
Right. He's so alone, I think, is
Yeah.
why he's kind of a tragic character in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, many ways. Even the fact his running scene in season 1 is so emotional and one of my favorite scenes still of the whole show. But even that moment for him was experienced alone. I feel like I think that's why his relationship with Jace is so meaningful, is because for most of what we've seen, a lot of his life is solitary with the exception of having Jace. It's like the only constant human interaction he really had throughout his life. Sean, what do you think of Victor's progression?
I liked it. That was real good, real neat. I do wonder, and I think I joked about this, and I'm going to clarify it's a joke, but I also think maybe there's something here, but maybe not. I do wonder if there was a certain viewer who watched that and they're like, this is the dangers of socialism. And then Jace represents, like, maybe I've been reading too much Barry Goldwater, but Jace is Barry Goldwater. He's trying to free us from the hive mind socialism of Victor.
I was kind of afraid people would have that be the takeaway as well. Like, see, like, you don't want to give handouts to the poor.
So I just want to say that's not my interpretation.
Right.
However, I could see it. And I guess the other thing is, on the other end, is life as a hive mind with peace on earth? I mean, clearly Victor ended up seeing that it was bad and he put a stop to it himself. But I'm just saying, peace on earth is good. Hive mind is bad. But,
I think that
who's to say? A lot of good questions here.
So, Sean, you said that's not your interpretation. The whole, first portion of this. What actually was your interpretation?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I just probably more the second one, I guess. Like, I mean, it's kind of just the basic, like, humankind is so awful and we'll never, the only way we'll have peace is if, you're all enslaved, basically. And you're like, yeah, it's good. I don't know if, like, it's not the most original, like, thought. It's not the most original plot. And even him being like the all-powerful one who actually ends up like time traveling sort of to like stop it is also not the most original. But at the same time, I eat it all up. I'm like, that's really good. I like it. And I think it did have to do with that, particularly that last scene with Jace and Victor. It is oddly moving. So I liked it. That was a really long way to say I liked that.
He has that Jace has the kind of monologue about our imperfections. Like, you strove so strongly to remove basically everything that makes us all unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what Victor was actually trying to do was eliminate the unfairness of the world. But in doing so, he made everyone the same, to the point of not even being able to progress. And I think that if there was some way to have more of a happy medium where you're not making everybody stagnant basically and petrified, and that you could actually have there be individuality still, but that there weren't the things that would force unfair circumstances onto people. Because I think his motivations weren't rooted in I want, like what you're saying, I want everybody to be enslaved. Nobody can move or do anything or think for themselves. I don't think that's like really what he was doing. I think it was more of like I want everybody to have. This is why I fear that people are going to take the wrong thing from this. But like I want everybody to be equal, which that's a good thing to strive for. But like how it was accomplished meant removing what makes people beautiful and unique and different. But if we could find a way where that wasn't,
Well, it did seem like almost in his initial like I'm Victor Jesus mode, his little following seemed peaceful.
I think when
But-
Victor was more at the helm, it sort of
Right.
seemed better. But then I almost feel like the Hex Core has the need to create a certain way, and that when it started to do that more is when it almost like would forgo humanity to get whatever it wanted as just like an organism. You know what I mean? Like it was more almost like bugs where it just, it has a certain like instinct and then that it does that. And I don't think it was like thinking about like, oh, but how are people going to feel about having no freedom whatsoever? I don't feel like that was its thought. It was just like a force, more of like a force of nature.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think I actually ever thought about the whatever, the arcane thing at the center of him. I don't know if I ever actually thought about it being in control versus not control. I think maybe I took it more at face value. Because I thought Sky was more a projection of his own thinking. I thought it was just kind of like a device almost, like these are his kind of warring thoughts. And like, but I also now that you mentioned that she was also kind of zapped by it, that I guess it could be her.
And there's the line where he's like, I'll miss our chats. And she says, no, you won't. And I'm like, is it because he won't even know because he's not there? Or is it because he's just been using her to rationalize what he's doing? And now that he doesn't need that, like I feel like there's so much up for debate with all that. Christy, what are your thoughts on all of this?
You guys covered all the bases pretty much. I'm just like here nodding along, agreeing, like, yeah, everything you're saying is like dead on. I think I didn't love the trajectory of Victor's arc because it was just it felt so random to me. Like, how do you go from wanting to cure physical ailments and helping people to equal human personality and individuality is bad and should be completely erased? I was like, how do you connect the dots?
That's true. We do ruin everything.
Yeah.
That's why, just to bounce off that, I feel like that's why what Sean was saying with like the initial version that he had wasn't necessarily the same as like what resulted when it felt like the Hex Core almost took over, because one had a person who'd had life experiences and valued human life versus the other thing that just saw like a means to an end. But sorry, I kind of interrupted you, Christy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like Hex Core. It was ultimately Hex Core in the end, and I think Sky was just a projection that like Hex Core was like giving him to try to get him along with this. Kind of reminds me of a fungus.
Yeah.
I will say, I guess what I wonder if it was Hex Core in control. I think the problem I have with that is we see Jace in an alternate reality where everything did go wrong, right? And like there's nobody, like whatever happened, and something in Victor had to have said like, this is wrong, right? I mean, like if Hexcore was just in control, when that it would have just gone what it wanted, right? Just but at some point he said like, didn't he say he like looked at every possible outcome and the only way to stop it was Jace? I mean, like it's kind of on the hairy edge of corny, but also again, I really like it. Like you're like, really, this idiot? That's like the chosen one almost. But so I don't know. I feel like I guess this is just my opinion. I feel like it was Victor. I think it was Victor all the way through, and then he was like, "Whoopsie, I might have messed up."
So he had to like almost repeat it to make
Yeah.
sure. I do think it's, yeah, I think that it's hard to tell. Sarah, was it you earlier who was saying it's hard to know where one starts and the other ends? Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. These sorts of plot lines, I feel like there is no correct necessarily takeaway unless somebody says something that's like not backed up by anything and it's literally just their own version. But there's just so much possibility with these sorts of stories. But I really, really liked it. Sarah, because we've kind of circled around, did you have more to add? Hearing more of the conversation now?
No, I don't think so.
No. I did think it was really moving and it was kind of beautiful in its own way, even though it took a lot to get to that point. But I even noted after episode 6, because they kept making the people that were following him kept telling everybody no weapons, no weapons. And then when Jace shows up, they're like walking him along. And that rang very strange to me because I'm like, what are they doing? They're like leading him to Victor, but he has a giant like hammer right now. Why are they, when they're weapons in this world, it's not like people don't realize that people can have strange weapons here. So I was like, why are they guiding him right now? This feels like they should have the one guy, Huck. He should be like, "Excuse me, no, put your weapon down." And do you guys remember that when they're like basically holding his hand, guiding him, and he does not seem well. He seems really out of it. So I was like, I feel like there's more going on here. So I feel like that points to, because I think some people maybe might feel as though the very end, like there was no foreshadowing that maybe Victor was behind it, but I liked how it played out. I do think though it's fair to say I think it's a little convoluted and up for debate, but I enjoyed it. What about Jinx? I think Sean, you were saying earlier she might be your favorite because of how much growth she has. I definitely think she got way more screen time than Vi, which I'm not necessarily upset about, even though I love Vi and I think we could have used more Vi. I think there was just so much for her to unpack and her kind of finding who she is. And that is, I think, a cheesy statement, but it's very relevant to her character because as a child, she kept trying to kind of like live up to Vi and fill these shoes of this big older sister. And then when she was gone, then she's trying to fulfill something and get validation through Silco. And then now that Silco's not there, she has to like truly figure out who she is and how much is Jinx and how much is Powder. That's obviously a big theme throughout. So I found her to be a character that I really liked seeing her kind of come into her own, even though it took a lot of really painful moments. They would not let her and Vi have any happiness. They give it to him for like a second and they take it away super traumatically. I mean, obviously there's a lot of parallels between the very beginning with the first act in season 1 and then what happens with Isha. And you're just like, stop, why? So I really liked her character and her growth throughout the season. Sean, since you mentioned really liking her growth and her character arc, what are your additional thoughts about Jinx this season?
Well, I mean, just the obvious things. I mean, I liked that she had to become kind of a big sister. I liked that. And I liked that she was more of a symbol than anything. I think like Jinx herself is not super heroic until the end, but it's what she represented that was important to the where they live. Is it Zon? I never
Yeah.
the Undercity, whatever it is. And I'm blanking on names. Who is the cool person with the arm? Mechanical.
Savika.
Savika. See, Savika, she's got the brains. She knew that Jinx was a symbol. Liked that. Shout out to Savika.
I like that she got a place on the council.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
She's just becoming one of them now. I'm just kidding.
It's just a vicious cycle.
She's always been for the cause. I feel like that's what makes her like kind of actually, and the fact that she tries even when Jinx isn't going to show up and she tries anyway, because she's like, we got to do something with this momentum. We have a chance. People are actually uniting. What did she say? And she made me laugh though, because she was like, we have the fire lights, we have the whatever Silco's followers were called. And she's like, we have goons, like about the other people in the Undercity. I found that amusing. Anyway, yeah, Savika's awesome, but continue, Sean. Sorry.
Oh man, I think that's about it. I think I did like obviously a lot the Echo, the alternate reality version of Jinx. I like the what could have been kind of thing if her life had been a little bit more normal. So yeah, I liked it. Big fan of Jinx. I was happy with the screen time.
Do you think she lived, Sean?
I don't know. See, because I'm an idiot. I was like, well, she's dead then. Okay, and I went about my day. And then you're like, but the airship. And I was like, what's the airship? Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was the first thing. The music.
Yeah. So I kind of, is it bad that I kind of wish she is? Like, I feel like that's like the way, to go out, man. But also at the same time, I really didn't want her to die. I was like, dude, just jump. Just jump. Please. Wait, no, it's actually Vi who needed the jump. I was like, Vi, jump. Vi, jump. Vi, jump.
Vi crying.
Yeah.
Like, they really do crying. They animate it well, because her sobbing when they fall. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. They just can't let Vi have anything.
I think the thing, and, I get it. Like, if she is alive and she's like, I'm alive, she might go to prison. I mean, she's still like doing a lot of bad stuff. So I get maybe not, but there's the little part of me is like, can you just tell your sister you're alive? If you're alive, why would you do that?
That, or like, can you go like let Echo know? Can you
leave like, I don't know, like a weird calling card somewhere, like, a clue, and then somebody, Although, speaking of clues, so Caitlin, looking at the end, is looking at something, and it is like a diagram of that chute, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay, so Caitlin's on the case.
Yeah.
See, maybe that's Caitlin's greatest gift to Vi is she's not like, I'm gonna go hunt down that person who killed my mom. Because I could see Caitlin doing that at the same time.
I think Caitlin already kind of got over that when she tells Jinx when she's locked up, like, we pretty much, like, we both did bad things, and
Caitlin's the worst, so you can never trust her. That is my opinion.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Christy, what are your thoughts on Jinx?
To go back to season 1 again, what I loved about season 1 was the relationship and exploration of Vi and Jinx's relationship. And I feel like in this season, I think the other reason why I didn't like this one as much with the whole like Victor storyline is that we just got so far away from Jinx and Vi. It didn't feel like their story anymore. Yeah. Which I get it. It's, but at the same time, it also like, it kind of, the story completely changed because it wasn't about like Piltover and Zon anymore either. It was like the Vesa and all that, and I'm like, did we really resolve anything? And I am in agreement with Sean that I do kind of hope that Jinx did die. I watched your video about the ending and I was like, oh, now I have doubts. But when I did think that she did die, I thought it was just like such a beautiful and poetic death because the whole time she's like, just let me die. I can't die. And this was like her choosing to do that herself. And I'm like, if that's the way it ended, I would I would be satisfied with that.
And Sarah, what do you think?
So even as I was watching it, like I was like, oh, she's definitely alive. And like everyone, all the comments being like, oh my God, she died. I was like, no, she didn't. I was like, I thought it was pretty obvious that she didn't.
Everybody else, Sean, you're an idiot.
Like even just the,
This
like,
is known though, so you know.
even just the end card thing being like in her style, I was like, I feel like that's enough for me to like believe that she's still alive. But I really liked her in this season. I liked that she had Isha and like that was able, like that relationship allowed her to not move on, but definitely like I guess move on a little bit.
Also
And like,
see how much of a pain little sisters can be.
yes.
Sean.
What was in her style? What was it?
It like after the airship, it like says the end, but it kind of like has some sort of like art style on it.
Kind of.
Oh.
Yeah.
It like cuts in a very Jinx way too, similar to like her hallucination art.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. But we did see her inspire copycats.
That's true.
That's true, but there's other
Maybe Jinx lives on, like she's like the pirate
Oh.
from the Princess Bride, you know, the whatever his name is.
I want to add to something, Sean, that you had talked about with Jinx. And you were saying like she became a hero kind of in the end. I think that there's like two kind of big moments when she makes the arm for Savika and Savika's like, why did you do this? And she says something like, I knew I could help. And it felt like one of the first times she did something because she genuinely wanted to without caring too much what the person thought of it though. Versus everything she did before, it was like waiting to see, did I do a good job? Did I do a good job? She kind of just did it to do it. But then when she also breaks those people out of Stillwater, I think is the name of the prison, and when they all are like touching her, and I think that was one of the first times she realized like truly what her actions could do and the power they could have. And it was less about doing it for herself and more seeing what she could do for kind of actually what Silco sort of always wanted, which was the betterment of Zaun and the treatment of its people. Like when she wasn't trying to do everything for validation for herself and actually would kind of looked outward, it allowed her to be herself actually, if that makes any sense, because she's not trying to fulfill a role to any one individual person in a way. So I thought that was really well done. And another notable moment, that scene. And then of course, then Vander enters the picture and you're like, no, but it was still good. Sean, are you trying to look something up? Were you trying to look up the name of that character?
No, it's really stupid. I was going to ask if anyone else, second Zack Snyder reference of the day, if anyone else thought the, when she's being touched, it was like in Batman vs. Superman when all the people are touching Superman.
Yeah. I
thought it.
I mean, I thought it was fairly similar too,
Superman.
but we also live together, so. Were there other characters? I feel like Jinx and Victor really kind of got a lot of the attention this season. So they were the two characters I really wanted to make sure we spent a fair amount of time on as individual characters. But were there any other things you wanted to know about some of the other people in this?
Smeech has a great top hat.
I was so glad when Smeech was killed quickly because one, that fight was great. But two, I appreciate the voice actor going all out, but also I'm like, I can't do a whole season of this. So, oh, also I have to say, because we've been kind of periodically cutting in random references to things we've seen. I've seen somebody made a video about like Echo's, episode 7 versus for Jace, when it's like Echo living in heaven and Jace is like speed running until like it was something really funny. And for people that like video games, I don't know if you know what speed runs are, but they're basically like where you try to get to the end as fast as possible. It usually involves like weird cheats and stuff. Anyway, I was very amused at that, and I kind of want to watch it just because I appreciate that title. Anyway, other characters though that we might want to mention really quick.
I have
Sarah.
one.
Yeah, I can like see.
Steb. I don't know if they ever really said his name, but he's that like fish guy.
The fish guy. I was gonna say the fish guy. I was like, I kept waiting for him to talk, and I'm like, is he ever gonna talk? I want to hear his voice.
The green one?
Yeah. I loved him, and when he took his hat off to the people from Zon coming over, I was like, oh my god. Like, I don't know. It's so simple, but like it just had so much emotion behind it. I was like,
Are you talking about the guy who looks like Abe Sapien?
I don't know what that is.
I think that's who you're talking about. He like
Fishy guy.
He's green.
well, Abe Sapien's green. So.
Okay. Yeah, probably, Sean. I think I remember you saying that while we were watching.
He has the little like things on his
Gills,
cheeks.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know more. Yeah.
That's Abe Sapien.
Okay, Christy, what is that face? That if I know you, that should be someone that you are thirsting after. Okay. I've seen your interest.
I need a while to warm up to them, you know.
Oh, okay. Was anybody else like so satisfied when Mel put the shield, like the circle, the dome around Maddie so it ricocheted until it hit her?
Oh, and then that killed her. That was good. But I'm like, at the same time, like, you couldn't do that sooner for anyone else.
Took Mel a little bit. I will say, watching that scene, the way they animated like Caitlyn's expression was so good in that moment. And also that scene is done really well where I know, Sean, you keep making fun of Caitlyn, but when she's like looking around and feeling like I have failed all of them because they're all like, they have guns to them. And then her telling, like, she knows Ambessa is going to probably defeat her, but her just being like, let's fight. I was like, yeah, let's go. I am so sad we did not get a Savika Ambessa fight. I'm like, I need these two ladies to, I needed that. That's probably my number one criticism. I needed more Savika first off, but I really wanted the like beefy lady fight, it would have been good. We could have, oh, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know if we talked enough about Mel in general, but Mel went from like way down here for me to way up here.
She got
Big Mel fan.
Sean and I kept commenting anytime anybody got like a new outfit. We were always like, outfit upgrade, new armor. And
she spent all of her XP on her
yeah. And if this was Elden Ring, her intelligence, so she could do the spells. Jace went like all strength,
No intelligence there. No intelligence.
Yeah. Christy, besides the fish guy, were there any characters that were notable to you that we didn't really like talk too much about?
I enjoyed Heimerdinger's little song. That was really
I like that song too.
It took me, I was like, wait, is that Heimerdinger I'm hearing in the background?
I know it's absurd, but Heimerdinger just basically being like, I've lived like 300 years waiting for you, my boy. Like, I was like, he's lived a long time in that alternate reality. He's been having a good life.
Lived that long in that other reality.
He was there for a little while, but not that long, for sure.
I think it was like 3 years.
A long time.
I think he's 300 years old.
I know. I'm just saying he was there for a long time.
He was there a long time. I don't really understand why he was there so much longer. But
Because he's old.
Anyway. I mean, why wouldn't they get placed like at the same time?
Magic is mysterious.
Yeah, that's true. That's the message for Arcane. I am amused because based off of everything that happens in season 2 and the way everything comes to a close, if you look at the description of Arcane on Netflix for season 1, it was like 2 siblings, like ragtag, them and their friends are caught up in the goings on of Piltover, and you're just like, wow, this is not even a little bit giving you an indication of like how off the walls it's gonna get. And it really does frame it as just mostly like a Jinx Vi story over the course of the 2 seasons. And I think if I had a wish overall for both these 2 seasons, it's that they had made Victor a little bit more prominent of a character, and maybe Jace as well, because they kind of go and like show more of their friendship and them together. And I think if they'd framed it as like these 2 plot lines of you have Jinx and Vi and then these 2 and how those all are woven together, I think that would have helped make the entirety of where the show went feel maybe a little bit more satisfying and less like we sort of were led to believe that it was going to be one thing and it was something a little different. I
think
still
it's also in like the marketing too, and like how people
Right.
talk about it, because everything that I have heard before about Arcane is just Jinx and Vi, Jinx and Vi. I didn't even know like Victor and Jace existed.
I think a lot of people knew about Victor, but based off where he starts and how much screen time he gets, I think I can't really speak for the people that know League lore, but I don't know that they either anticipated that we were gonna get so much. I have seen some people upset at his design, like his final form design, because they're like, it's way better in the game. And I saw someone that's like, I thought it was cool, but I haven't played the game, but like I thought it looked cool. And they're like, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You don't know. And I'm just like, okay. It feels a little bit like a duck imprinting. Like, which one did you see first? And you're gonna probably like that one. I have to admit, I thought the designs for a lot of their like final forms, we'll say, were really cool. And I did like that fight with the robot that came into the room and was fighting like Jason Mel. I thought that scene was like, it was really cool. And I feel like kind of goes under the radar a little bit because there's so many other really big moments or big action scenes or emotional moments. Oh, and the guy that got like smushed and shot, that was satisfying. But I'm like, wow, the guy like had the worst way to go. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Where Loris was and then died, and the other guy took that spot to try to shoot from there. That spot, like somebody just gets like smushed right there. And then anyway, that was very random. I already kind of give my final thoughts for the entire 2 seasons. I thought they were great. Animation is great. I think we're very spoiled because this is so good. And season 1 was so good that I almost think, I don't want to try to tell people they're wrong about their opinions. So that's not what I mean. But I kind of feel like collectively the criticisms are getting to be really extreme. Like some people are saying this is like absolute garbage. Some people are saying it's like, this is the most disappointed I've been since the end of Game of Thrones. It's like, I disagree pretty strongly with those statements, but of course people are, are going to feel differently. I think it is incredible. And I can't think of another thing we've gotten quite like this. So for me, even though I think there are a lot of criticisms that are very legitimate and very fair, and I agree with a fair amount of them, to me, it's still one of the best shows I've ever seen. So I loved it. Wish we'd gotten, to your point, Christy, a little bit more with the marketing and the way things played out in season 1, emphasizing more Victor. But I would say that's probably my biggest criticism, but I still really liked it. So Christy, what are your kind of final thoughts?
Like I definitely have more criticisms for the second season. Just like things I wish could have been done. Not saying that the second season was bad in any way. It's just like my personal preference. But I wouldn't say it's garbage. I think it's still really good. Like I was glued to the screen for 8 hours straight. But I think because of the second season, it kind of becomes more of something. Instead of me just saying, watch Arcane, I'll be like, watch Arcane. asterisk. It's just a little caveat, what to expect.
Yeah. It's a little less like the first season I had my mom watch it, and second season I'm kind of like, I don't know if she's gonna like this anymore. I feel like it sort of was broader reaching in season 1 and kind of maybe less so in season 2. I feel like it gets a little more niche. But not necessarily a bad thing for me. I think definitely Sean doesn't mind that at all. He likes the weird, so that was, if anything, probably a plus. But Sean, you can chime in here in a second. Sarah, what would you say your final thoughts are?
I mean, I can't remember the last time that I was like this. Like, I could not get over a show. Like, to be fair, I don't watch that much like non-reality TV anyway, but like for me to be this invested in something,
you read
like,
a lot of books, so
yeah. So I don't know. This is like definitely one of my favorite shows. Like, even though there were some things I would change, I still think it's amazing. Like, the animation and the ways that they tell stories, I think, is amazing. I love so many of the characters. It's so good. And I actually find it really interesting that there are so many people who have criticisms, because I think I'm curious if that's just people who like are online and like talking about this with other people who have seen the show, because I do keep seeing that I'm trying to look it up right now, but like the IMDb rating for Arcane is super high, and even like the rating per episode is like insane. So the show overall has a 9.1 out of 10, and like the last episode has a 9.4, and like I think all of the episodes in season 2 have above a 9, like, which I guess is kind of unheard of.
Difficult.
Yeah, so it seems like the general people don't have that many
maybe
criticisms.
we're just getting sucked into a certain kind of maybe what happens is we're those people. It's like political things where you're like, this is ridiculous, and then like it shows you more of that. Maybe it's that. Yeah. Sean, what are your final thoughts?
I really liked it. I think the criticisms are weird, and I have no notes except, like I said, just maybe like a pinch more Vi here and there would have been fine, but the stranger it got, the more I was like, nice. Like I was I'm pretty easy to please, like obscure, well, not obscure, but weird doesn't actually make sense. Time travel, I'm the savior and I had to find the one way to, save the world. Excellent. Love it. I will say, you asked at the very beginning, you said, what did you have predictions while you're watching it? My immediate thought was no, because I don't do that. However, you can probably tell everyone all of my wrong predictions when when Jay saw the person with the hood. I was like, oh, I bet it's Mel. And then like I was like, no, wait. Oh, I bet it's Victor. And then I was like, no, wait, I think it's Mel. And I would go back and forth. And then I was like, maybe it's just some other person we haven't met yet. And then it was Victor.
I kind of ties to one of Sarah's things about how like there's a lot of symbolism that Mel and Victor represent similar.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, they did give her a similar look to his look with the cloak and stuff. But yeah, I will say Sean and I also watched all of Attack on Titan this year, which I was
all of the Bear, and I was like, that's
we did watch all of the Bear. That's a good show, but but Attack on Titan, this isn't going to be spoilery, or it's not going to get an Attack on Titan, but I wasn't expecting for there to be some similarities. Like, these shows are so different, and then in the end I'm like, kind of there's some things about these that are kind of alike, actually. So it'll really, I feel like if you don't know all of the stories, you don't know how they're similar, but if you do, you know. So if anybody wants anything like if you know what you were saying, Sarah, about like it's been I don't know the last time I couldn't get over a show was Attack on Titan, which was like right before this. So for me,
Much bigger time commitment.
much bigger time commitment. But
The bear, if the bear ends this in a similar way, I would be very shocked. That would be quite the change.
Yeah,
it
would.
In everything.
But I would say if somebody feels like there is a hole after Arcane, maybe try Attack on Titan. Even though I feel like maybe it doesn't have, there's some parallels. I feel like you can pick up on early, maybe, you know, like power imbalances and things like that. But I feel like you're probably not going to see them for a long time because their settings are very different. But there's some similarities between these shows. So, does anybody have a recommendation for anybody that's left with a hole in their heart, an arcane-shaped hole in their heart, for what to maybe check out after? Sean, you do like weird. Do you have any like really weird? What about like the Jonathan Hickman Avengers?
That is exactly what I was going to say. That is an excellent suggestion. So, yeah, I actually started thinking about that. I was like, Jonathan Hickman's Avengers run is stupendous, and it gets really out there. And I don't feel like it starts that out there, and it gets progressively more out there. And you know, Grant Morrison's Batman, there's alternate realities, including a rainbow suited Batman that is also spectacular. So yes, 2 comic book suggestions. And those are both really long. So if you want like a what the world might have been kind of story, House of M from Marvel, also very good, but not a huge commitment. It's very short.
Or the one that the Wanda show is based on, right?
How it's kind of loosely based on. Oh, are you talking? Well, yeah, the Wanda show is sort of like a mashup of House of M and Vision by Tom King.
Sarah, what would your recommendation be?
The first thing that came to mind, even though I don't know how similar they necessarily are, is the show The Dragon Prince.
Okay.
Which I have not watched all of that's out yet. But especially like Mel's character design, I feel like there are similar characters with that kind of design in The Dragon Prince. And I don't know, they just remind, maybe because they're both animated, I don't know. They just remind me of each other a little bit.
Hey, sometimes you just need another good animated show. So.
Yeah. The Dragon Prince definitely is way younger though. Like definitely a kid's show.
Kind of seems like, I haven't watched it, but would you say it's like Avatar meets Arcane in its tone a little bit?
I think it's even younger than Avatar.
It's younger than Avatar? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Least, well, okay, that's
like middle grade, right?
Well, Aang is like 100 years old, so.
Nobody meant.
I did watch Avatar as a teenager, I guess, and The Dragon Prince is more recent, so I watched it as an adult. So
so maybe it feels.
Yeah.
Okay. Christy, do you have any?
I would say if you want more of it's not exactly the same, but you know, the kind of Jace and Victor dynamic. I would recommend the anime Puella Magi Madoka Magica. Have you seen Madoka, Sarah?
A long time ago.
Oh my god. So good. I think I've recommended it to you before.
How do you spell it?
Oh, okay. I'll just, if you just search as the one name, you can find it. It's Madoka. Madoka.
Madoka. Right? That's what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to put that on the screen for anybody who is interested.
But do not do any research on it. You have to go into it blind.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. All right. I mean, I would like to at some point make maybe a list of things to check out that are going to fill certain, because I don't think there's anything quite like Arcane, but there's pieces depending on what you like about it. Oh, I'll add, just because I feel like there's such great character work and like mental health talked about. I mean, obviously Stormlight, so many of us love Stormlight for that reason. Very, very different worlds.
What is
But-
this Stormlight? What is it?
You've read it. Three of them anyway. But I would like to know for anybody that watches all 2 hours of this, what their recommendations would be for people who are interested in finding something similar to Arcane. And just in general, if anybody wants to let us know their thoughts, what's the most out there take you've seen? And what is something that you just feel like chatting about? Sean, go ahead.
I have one more.
Yes.
Okay. So Sarah brought this up at the very beginning, and I still stand by it for the first season that it's tropey but just done really, really, really well. I feel like Saga by Brian K. Vaughan is like that, where you're like, yeah, I've seen this before, but it's done really, 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 really well.
And Saga is another comic.
Yes.
With great art and very colorful.
Amazing art.
Some of the color usage is probably more like what you get with Arcane.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have another one now too.
Yay! Oh, that's okay.
It's just like if you want something like super epic and kind of like the, one side versus the other and like complex character relationships, I would recommend Red Rising, honestly.
I do love Red Rising.
Yeah. Especially when you get to the later books. Like the first book, anytime anyone recommends Red Rising, you have to get through the first book. I'm sorry to be that person, but it's true.
I liked the first book. I'm always so alone in this. I like Red Rising more than Golden Sun. I feel like no one else agrees. Morning Star's the best, though.
Morning Star's the best.
Like, you agree about book 1 versus book 2?
Yeah.
Finally, I didn't realize this is why we're book twins. We have some very different bookish opinions. Sean, did you have another one?
No, I was just gonna say there are dozens of us. Dozens.
Dozens.
Gonna be
That's
my contribution.
a reference from Arrested Development.
Yes,
about never nudes.
Yep.
Okay, I know.
Nobody's gonna know what that is, though. I feel like, but
I know.
that is what Sean was referencing. Okay, officially ending it. Thanks everybody for watching. We hope you enjoyed Arcane, and if you didn't, hopefully, I'm gonna kind of feel bad if you're one of the people where I'm like, that's such a stupid opinion. But
if you listen to this for 2 hours and you're like, this show sucks, though, that'd be pretty surprising. Like, I'd be like, wow, a long time.
That's true. I don't normally listen to 2-hour-long discussions about something I didn't care for. So
yeah,
unless I think the people are maybe gonna like also trash on it, I'm like, yeah, exactly, or something. But that's not what we did. So anyway,
at least their view and AdSense is going to charity.
yes, AdSense revenue goes to charity. And check out our merch. Christy is so wonderfully modeling it for us. We have lots of World Hoppers stuff. You can get it on clothing and mugs and stickers and fridge magnets. There's all sorts of things. So check that out. It goes to charity. It goes toward a good cause. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.